Hey, I'm JR.
And I'm Mike from the 18 Over Par with Mike and JR podcast.
Welcome to Season 4 of the pod, where we'll continue exploring the sights, stories, and sounds of golf on the prairies, where you'll find some of the most golf courses per capita of anywhere in the world, and maybe we'll even drink some more beer this season.
That's right, JR. More beer.
It's the 18 Over Par podcast with Mike and JR.
You suck, you jackass.
Welcome to 18 Over Par with Mike and JR, proudly presented by Bryce Matlashewski, who is an investment advisor with Endeavor Wealth Management, part of IA Private Wealth, and a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund. You can contact Bryce at 204-515-3446. I'm JR, he's Mike, and today we look back on the 2024 President's Cup at Royal Montreal Golf Club with the Executive Director of the President's Cup and past guest of the pod, Ryan Hart. Well, super excited to bring this gentleman back into the situation. I was going to call it the Situation Room, but is that something on CNN, like Wolf Blitzer or something like that back in the day? I don't know if Wolf's still there or
I
not.
think so.
Good on him. But I got my honey water because I'm losing my voice, so we're going to keep this one short. And Mike is solo parenting.
Yeah. Mom's out. She's enjoying as she should.
Mima's helping out.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know, I went to 4 Jets games in the last 2 weeks. You know, she deserves her night out too.
Wow. Good for you.
It was only 3. But yeah.
Four's coming up.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Ryan was cooking dinner tonight. What were you making?
It was my middle daughter's turning 19's birthday, so she requested a family favorite of tuna casserole. So little tuna casserole, green beans, and then we're doing the pod, and after that we bring out the birthday cakes. You know, an old school favorite.
Yeah, and you'll notice I got my merch.
I see that. Thank you. Thank you for supporting.
Oh, I don't have any merch. Didn't make it to me yet, JR.
I know, it's in my backseat of my car. I gave Sandy his shirt last night for his 75th. So Sandy Kursiba celebrated his 75th birthday. We were at Rumors Comedy Club.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there was a gentleman who was on stage who was the headliner. I believe he was or is currently a member at Glendale. And he roasted Sandy, as did all the other comics, because Sandy decided to stand up anytime they mentioned his name.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And you're asking for punishment.
Yeah,
but,
exactly. Yeah.
but the pro never shied away from a good challenge.
No, he sure didn't. At one point, I thought he was going to go on stage and do a set of comedy, but like, no, hell no, don't let Sandy do that, because we're going to be here for 3 hours.
I was
surprised.
talking
about Finchy and his days with Mo Norman and
Dorf on Golf. We talked about Dorf on Golf for about 10 minutes afterwards. Go look that up. Go Google Dorf on Golf. That was in every pro shop in the 70s and 80s, apparently.
Oh, big time.
But let's jump into the show here. I want to give a shout out, as we always do, to Bryce Matlashewski, who is an investment advisor with Endeavor Wealth Management, part of IA Private Wealth, and a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund. You can contact Bryce 204-515-3446. You can also catch him in our link tree. Just go to our Facebook or Instagram. Just click on that bio, and right there, you'll find Bryce. That's where our link tree is, and so is Bryce.
And JR, I think Sandy is the only guest we've had on twice now, now we've had Ryan Hart on twice.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
So
Team Lefty, we've had Team Lefty.
Privilege.
Yeah.
So. Oh yeah. Well, they don't count. I thought those episodes got deleted, but it's an honor very few have had. So
well, that's awesome. Thank you.
We'll send you a plaque.
We should, actually. We can get you a plaque. It was a great event, the President's Cup. We wanted to do a little recap, bring you back, talk about it. I went there. It was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life. And I'm not saying that lightly. It's not a euphemism. It was fantastic. Awesome. I had so much fun while I was out there, and the golf was incredible. Team International, they didn't win, whatever. But it was close. I think I saw a stat that came out, and it was the Team USA won 116 holes, and then Team International won something like 115. It was something like that.
117 to 116.
There you go. So if you think about that, that's just how close it was. The points wise, not as close, but when you think of actually winning holes, it was that darn close. And also the merch tent, shout out to the merch tent. How big was it? Like 40,000 square feet or something
Just
like
over
that?
40,000 square feet, yeah.
It was massive.
Retail fun.
And it was well staffed. There were some volunteers there and some staff from the biggest names in golf apparel in the world. And I was wearing my 18 over par hat, which Mike is wearing right now. And one of the Peter Millar reps called it out and said, "That is a lovely hat."
Nice. There you go.
Nice.
So shout out to Mike.
Yeah. And maybe we can do a little thing with Peter Millar soon. Maybe we do a little mashup.
Foreplay guys did, so why not you?
That's right.
Got to start somewhere. And that'd be a
Exactly.
good place to start. Well, I commented on my experience a little bit as a whole, but for you, Ryan, how did it compare to doing the Players' Championships and, say, the Players' Cup?
It's completely different from the standpoint that, I mean, you've got 24 of the best players and, you know, representing their country, the pride, the passion and all that. I mean, it's just a completely different vibe. I mean, I'll hands down say that the Players' Championship is still my favorite tournament in golf, but to be able to, you know, be humble enough to have the opportunity to run both our largest and domestic and international events, you have that front row seat to the comparison of both. And I think there is such a distinct difference between, you know, a team match play event and where you're representing your country and just the feel of it. I mean, you know, I remember when I saw you, I believe it was on near the 10th tee when I was walking by, you know, you could hear the roars on the back nine. And, you know, at the play, they say that at Augusta. I mean, Augusta is built the way it is for a full field event where you hear the roars, you know what's going on. There's not a lot of technology on the golf course. It's kind of the lore of it, right? At the Players' Championship, there's so much technology and the course is so big and the ballpark is so broad. You could get guys moving up the leaderboard here, there, and everywhere. You really don't know, unless, you know, back in the Tiger days, you know, or if someone's going to make a hole in one or whatever the case may be, you know, something was happening, but tough to really know. I mean, at Royal Montreal, I mean, for sure, starting Friday. I mean, Thursday was a bit of I'm going to be the first to say it was a little bit more of a corporate crowd. It was a great crowd, but it wasn't as boisterous as Friday. And then obviously, you know, with the turnaround with the international team on Friday, I was in the media center a few times and you could hear roars from every angle of that golf course. And I think that is the biggest difference, is that energy and explosion of the sounds around the golf course. And it makes you, you know, look at your phone, try to find a leaderboard, whatever the case may be, and what just happened. And, you know, on Friday, obviously, you know, when was it, you know, the route of 5-zip to come back from being down 5-zip. I mean, that place was electric. So I think that's the biggest difference that in my mind is just that sound and the pride and the passion that you feel on the grounds is just different than a full field event.
Yeah, I definitely got those vibes, and I found it enjoyable in the sense where you can kind of watch a little bit of everyone if you wanted to. You weren't just like, okay, well, I'm going to follow this group around for a bit, or I'm going to follow this group around for a bit, but I'm not going to see, you know, the other 120, 40 players in the field. I get to see a little bit of everybody, especially on the first hole, which to kind of paint the picture for you, we posted some on our Instagram of the first tee there. I mean, I can't even describe it. I'm speechless. Whereas about 2,000, 2,500 seats. 2,500 people. Yeah, 2,500 people. You get there about 30 minutes early. They start the party going pretty much from there, and then it continues on until all the groups have teed off, or all the matches have teed off. And what an experience that was. A lot of sing-alongs, a lot of chants. And yeah, I guess that's just something they do now every year for the President's Cup, or whenever the President's Cup is played, that's what they do.
Yeah, I think, you know, you want to bring that energy. And I think whether it's a President's Cup or a Ryder Cup, you know, I mean, that first tee amphitheater is really the epicenter of both those events. I think, you know, having had the privilege of being at both Ryder Cups and President's Cups, you know, they have their own distinct feels and how they want to do it. For us, with how close the first tee was to the clubhouse and the pro shop and where the putting green was and so on, we didn't have a lot of space to work with. So it was almost like, you know, we kept talking about how do we bring the Bell Center to the first tee, that atmosphere of, you know, the Leafs and the Habs on a Saturday night in Montreal. How do you bring that energy to the first tee? And so we decided to go a little more vertical than wide just because of the space that we had. But, there was a couple suites on the grass level, and then we had club seating down right to the grass level on player right, and then everything else was wrap around, first come first serve GA seating, and people brought it. I mean, there was some great outfits and chants and so on, and I got to say, there's probably 3 or 4 highlights for me throughout the week, but Thursday, walking onto the first tee and walking up into the GA area up top and running across Rob Guthrie and Jason Ludke and Dave McMillan, Curtis Cross and the boys. I mean, all there. I mean, I just, gave those guys a big hug, and it was like, how about this? Like, how cool is this right now? I mean, you had the chance to be a fan for a few minutes and just kind of take it in. And that first tee experience was pretty fun.
I think they ended up on television on the old boob tube because they were right up against the gate there, right up against the bars. First row seating, and it was interesting to see. So you had those folks there, and then just the amount of people that you'd meet from across Canada, but also from Manitoba. Bumped into people from Carberry, Brandon, St. Pierre, Jolie, Dauphin, all over, well represented, all out in Montreal for one hell of a time. There were some boys from Saskatchewan who maybe got into it a night before, but they were all in referees' outfits, and they maybe got 2 hours of sleep, but they were hanging around the 9th green as groups came through, just cheering their little hearts out, and it was incredible to see, and again, a fantastic experience. And what, I guess, all goes into that when it comes to staff and volunteers-wise, because it seemed like there was a lot of people that were involved to get this thing off the ground and to get through the weekend.
We had about 1,500 volunteers. So 1,500 volunteers for 24 players. You think the average PGA Tour event has somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 for a 144 person field. So we wanted to keep the same because we wanted to try to make sure we were moving people. And Royal Montreal is a big property, but the 18 that we were playing isn't very, I wouldn't say it's not very expansive. It's fairly old school up and back. So we wanted to make sure we were really working on moving people around. So we kept the volunteer number up, and the volunteers were unbelievable. I mean, we had literally volunteers from coast to coast, volunteers from the US, volunteers from the UK, Spain. What was the other one? Italy, a couple from Mexico. I mean, it was amazing when we looked at the list after, and, we were going to do our, thank yous and so on Sunday night, like to just see how far people came to volunteer for the event was really cool. And then, I mean, from a staffing perspective, there was probably, if you don't include NBC, we probably had 400 people on site. From a staffing perspective, over and above I think it was 350 credentialed media. It was, there was a lot of people coming together to put it on, but it was pretty special.
And Mike and I have dubbed this the Q4, the quarter of the superintendent. But I think I saw the maintenance crew, and were they from all over the world too? It seemed like there was maybe 100 or so for keeping that golf course in tip-top shape.
It's pretty insane when you think about it. The Royal Montreal has 2 18s and a 9 on a regular week. And, they have probably 20 key members of their agronomy team and, a few seasonal staff here and there, but it's not a big staff. So he brought in the better part of 100 people to help him. And that was from across Canada, a couple from the US that he'd met so the superintendent, Greg Greer, went down to Quail Hollow when we had the President's Cup there, and he worked the event with them, worked with their superintendent and so on. So I know he met some folks there, but he was unbelievable. I mean, if you think about, go back 8 weeks before the event and the monsoon rains that we had in 15, 16, 17, 18 were all underwater, literally 6 to 8 weeks before the event. Like, and when I mean underwater, I'll send you a picture after. I mean, it was completely underwater. Like, you couldn't see the bridge on 16 walking from the fairway to the green. So what that crew did to get that course in the immaculate condition that it was in, it blows my mind how good they were. And, people go, oh, the PGA Tour agronomy team came in and so on. Yeah, they came in the week before. They didn't come in that whole lead up. And they had, our team came in, I would say once a quarter type thing, and, checked in and they talked on the phone and those kind of things. But the rolling up your sleeves and doing what they did to present that course the way it was I mean, I give Greg Greer and his team all the credit in the world.
We take a quick break to hear from Bryce Madlashewski, who is an investment advisor with Endeavor Wealth Management, part of IA Private Wealth, and a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund.
Well, Bryce, it's great to have you on and to have a quick chat. My first question is, what can an investment advisor like yourself from Endeavor Wealth do for me, and how can that differ from my current experience of trading with Wealthsimple, just based on the recent Twitter feeds?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, you guys. Yeah, discount brokers like Wealthsimple certainly have their place, but at the end of the day, you get what you pay for. Those platforms are very limited in what they offer, and they're more ideal for just basic trading. So if that's what you're looking to do, it's really not a bad platform for that. But what we do at Endeavor, we take a more holistic approach. We examine an individual's needs, both short-term and long-term, and we go way beyond just investments. We look for tax opportunities, ensuring the decisions you are making today minimize your overall tax that you might be paying. We also help our clients address estate and insurance needs. So really anything we can do to assist in your overall wealth management approach. And going back to some of those discount brokers and things that you see on the internet, a lot of times people don't realize the amount of intrinsic risk that they're taking on with making some of those trades. And so finding balance is another key thing that we do for our clients at Endeavor.
That was Bryce Madlashewski, who is an investment advisor with Endeavor Wealth Management, part of IA Private Wealth, and a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund. You can contact Bryce at 204-515-3446.
Well, I know you mentioned kind of that first hole, there, JR, you were probably one of the people that were getting there right when the gates opened. At what time? And then the golf didn't start for another 3 hours. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it was always pretty early, and I was getting there because I didn't, especially on the first day, on the Thursday, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how many people are going to be lined up. I didn't know if there was going to be a full-on race to get those wristbands so you can get onto the first tee and get into the grandstands there. But yeah, it was about that. But I mean, it's smart. You got a bar right there when you walk in, intelligent. And then you had the merch tent, and then you eventually get up to the first hole. But what was really neat about that is you weren't just waiting around. So say the gates opened, you can actually go get a wristband, and then you scan yourself in, but you can scan yourself out. And they say, yeah, just be back here for X time, which is usually, I think, 30, 35 minutes before the first match was set to tee off. So once I figured that out, I went a little bit later, as the days progress, and
that's good.
Yeah, had some chances to check out the course and the other holes that maybe weren't being used at Royal Montreal, as well as the merch tent, and maybe that's a bar or two.
That's dedication. Even to get there early on Saturday and Sunday too, after maybe a late night. That's dedication.
Well, if the boys from Saskatoon and Regina could do it, I think I from Winnipeg could do it too.
Ryan, how many spectators total were there over, I guess, the week or the event?
Total from whether it would be the course downtown and our fan fest back and forth. It was, I'd say, roughly 100,000 people. Wow. When you look on TV, it's crazy, the amount of people that said to me, oh, there must have been 50,000 people on there. And I'm like, no. I mean, there definitely were choke points where, I've seen freeze frames or watched around on TV. I still haven't watched the whole thing, but looking forward to doing that at some point. But looking through our photo shelter, where there was people, and I think it was the corner of 14, there was 20 deep, and the nature of match play, when you've only got 4 or 5 matches on the golf course, is on top of each other, right? So we were joking, and because we did hear it a few times, we were like, there must be 40,000 people out here, or 50,000 people. And my head of ops, Sam Harker, and I were standing there. We were going, could you imagine if that was the case? Like, where would they go? How would we even get them in here? I think Saturday was probably the craziest day from a head count perspective. People seem to get in and out of there fairly decently. Considering some of the challenges that we had. And I think people enjoyed it considering they were stacked on top of each other. And, hopefully there was some vantage points here and there. There's a few holes that had, bleachers on it if you didn't have hospitality, or, there's definitely some mounding in and around Royal Montreal, especially on the back nine, that you can get some good vantage points. So yeah, again, by the sounds of the roars and the cheers and smiley faces that we saw on the way out, I think people had a pretty good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Yeah, the bus rides home were pretty good.
Probably loud or quiet.
It was loud, and there was one bus I think that didn't have air conditioning, so that kind of kind of turned a couple people off. But I had a great time. I met some people. We talked about water and whether or not we were going to be able to pee into this bottle or not. But anyways, that's from another point. But the bus is there too, like the shuttle service. I can't imagine the logistics that went into that. You had shuttles all over town. I was at the downtown one, which was by the Bell Center, which was fantastic. And like these were legit motor coaches, I guess. Is that the right term for it? But yeah, it wasn't like your mom and pop school bus. It was legit and very comfortable. Most of them, at least the ones that I were on, except for that one time, were air conditioned. And people were just having a great time, and you got to shoot the shit with 50 other folks who were on the golf course that day or heading to the golf course that day.
Yeah, it's kind of cool when you get people, that are all going to do the same thing. I mean, there's some people that just don't like the shuttle scenario, and I respect that. But, I think these days when you're going to large events, it's kind of the nature of the beast. But I think there's a certain sense of camaraderie when you're out there and, sharing your war stories from the day, or, listen to people embellish what happened in the day, or whatever the case may be, or just the excitement on the way there. I think, I've done it. I mean, I've been on shuttles at many different events, and I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, we had 215 shuttles running at any one point. So it was, I got to give hats off to the team in Emotive company we work with at the Players Championship as well. And, brought them on very early because they do such a great job there. And, they learned the market. They partnered with some different organizations in the market, and Will Escalante and his team did an unbelievable job.
How much involvement did the PGA Tour have? You said the greens crew, the green staff came in, a week before, but when it came to sponsorships and all that, how much involvement did they have?
I mean, having the fact we oversee it, I mean, I'm an employee of the PGA Tour. So, I mean, I think the fact that, we oversee the whole thing, it's pretty intertwined. So, we everything from sales to operations to tournament services to volunteer coordination to logistics, you name it. So we pretty much have our hand in a little bit of everything. So, but it's, it's truly a team effort, because you come into a market, and it's different than an event like the Players where you're there year over year. I mean, you come into a market, you've got to, earn the trust of the community, earn the trust of the people that you're working with, and learn and listen. I mean, you've got the cultural differences, the language differences, and so on. So, I would say from Royal Montreal to, the volunteers, to the city, to the, the partners that we had, I mean, everybody just, it was a community. And I think that was one of the really cool things about it.
Yeah, it certainly was special. And I have a feeling that if you say we're to do this event, if it was an annual event and you went back to Royal Montreal next year, it would be even nuttier.
Honestly, there's not many regrets when it comes to it, but that's one is we, hadn't been there in 17 years. How we build golf tournaments changes so much. And I think that it was teaching the market about what we are today versus what we were in 2007. So there was a lot of people that just didn't quite, understand it until they got there. And then, I mean, once they were there, it was unreal. And there was, CEOs of top 5 banks in Canada that literally said to me, like, don't you wish you could do this next year? And the conversations would be a lot less. And I'm like, yeah, it would be different. But I mean, that's kind of one of the cool things about a President's Cup is it's not in your backyard every year, and, it gets to move around, and we share it around the world. So yeah, I mean, I think next year would have been unbelievable, but I think it was pretty cool from what I've heard from those who have watched it, and we're out and around all over the course. So.
Do you have any involvement then with the 2026 President's Cup in Chicago?
No, a good friend of mine, Joey Chitwood, is running that. He started about a year and a half ago, I guess. And they're full on. I mean, we had a 2026 exhibit at the event. I mean, we talk a lot, as much as I talked with Adam Sperling in at Quail Hollow in 2022. I mean, I think you swap war stories, and share ideas and what worked, what didn't, and those kind of things. But that one's his, and I think he's going to do a great job with it. Chicago's a great sports town and a great market that's obviously had, Ryder Cups and other major events. So I think it'll be awesome.
Yeah, are you going to check that one out?
I am making plans. Yes,
You're just going to
had so much fun.
You're going to be a President's Cup lifer now.
I guess so. Apparently, yeah, it turned me into an even bigger fan if there was such a thing.
Well, I mean, you get the Ryder Cup in between, right? I mean, you can slide down to Bethpage and
absolutely
not for that money.
Well,
we don't make that much. Bryce Matlashewski isn't doing that well for us.
I think I read you have to, if you want to volunteer, you have to pay $350.
Yeah, I think I saw that too. Yeah, interesting.
I don't know. I didn't read the article, but
it is becoming more of a trend, and I think I will say, I think they're getting, I'm not going to argue the price point. I mean, it's definitely a different concept, but I mean, I definitely think the Ryder Cup is one of the bigger events out there. And I do think, you're seeing a trend of all-inclusive tickets, which is what they are doing, with all-inclusive food and non-alcoholic beverages and so on. It is in New York, and I know that things are way more expensive to build and do in New York. The volunteer piece is definitely a trend across the board. And I think, when you look at what's given back, I mean, people pay to volunteer at the Canadian Open, they paid to volunteer at President's Cup and so on. And all it is they're paying the cost of whatever they're getting. They're not paying full retail for it. And that also, I think one of the coolest things about volunteering, whether it's a President's Cup or a Ryder Cup or any PGA Tour event, is your badge is your ticket for the week. So if you were to think about it from a President's Cup perspective, on a weekend, one of the Saturday was, I think it was $250 to go on Saturday, for a GA ticket. Well, it was $270 to volunteer at the President's Cup. And you got polo, pullover, hat, food each day, parking, and you got tickets, basically your pass on every day. So I think that, if someone doesn't want to pay the full boat, I would say volunteering is the coolest thing. I mean, you usually have to work 2 shifts and then you're good to go watch golf for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
So I think it's a pretty slick way to do it.
I would agree. Yeah. Media spun it differently. But I would be, but we don't identify as media here at 18. But
not yet until we get our Podcast of the Year award from Golf Manitoba. Maybe next week. We don't know. We're going to the Golf Manitoba Awards. Maybe next week. Maybe they'll surprise us. We'll see what happens.
Come on, Munzie.
Yeah,
make the right choice.
Ryan, any big situations that arose that you had to deal with in a big jam in the moment, and you guys figured it out, or anything like that you could share with us?
Bridge construction.
I'll stay away from that one. I mean, there's always, any time in a live event business, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when it's going to happen. And so I would say the biggest thing for us, honestly, back to the shuttles, was there's a shuttle inspection service as part of one of the levels of government in Quebec. And so all your shuttles, 215 of them, have to be inspected. So we had hoped that, and we talked to them and we said, Tuesday and Wednesday would be great, less traffic, come inspect them, no problem, want to cooperate. Unfortunately, they had decided to start inspecting our shuttles Thursday morning, about 45 minutes before our gates open. And then again, Thursday afternoon, about an hour before play ended. And then the same every, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Wow.
So we, let's just say I got very familiar with the mayor and her office and their cell phones. And, we had daily conversations, and I will say I give the city of Montreal a ton of credit. They were quick to respond and make it go away that day. And we were compliant and made sure that we did all the things. They came back middle of the day, did some, and then unfortunately started up again back in the day. So we stopped that, and then they came back later in the evening. So I would say that was the biggest one. And it caught me off guard. Not off guard every day, but it was one of those things that you're like, okay, we're trying to be compliant, but unfortunately, they were just strategically picking times that were somewhat inconvenient. So that was probably the biggest one. Other than that, I mean, everything else pretty much, you either expected, or if it happened, someone picked it up early enough and it got dealt with.
You didn't run out of any beer or anything major like that?
That would have been catastrophic. So no, we worked hard at our par stock, if you will, and I think we were okay on that department.
Well, there were some days there where the fridges were getting kind of empty. I was getting pretty worried, but it all worked itself out. But I know you got to run. You got to get back to your middle child's birthday party, and my voice is slowly deteriorating into nothing.
Going away.
Yeah. So thanks again to you for coming on. Thanks again to Bryce Malashewski.
Appreciate it.
Who is an investment advisor with Endeavor Management, part of IA Private Wealth, and a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund. Contact Bryce at 204-515-3446. We'll have to catch you some other time. So I guess if you want to give us a sign off and say what you're up to next, you're just taking some time now with family.
I'm back and forth between Winnipeg and Montreal for probably the next month and a half, wrapping things up. And then I'm going to sign off for a few weeks, and we'll figure out what's going on in the new year.
Right on. Well, thanks again. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your night, and we'll chat with you whenever you figure out what you're doing.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the support. We'll talk soon.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay.
And you can count on me waiting for you in the parking lot.